The expansion of space worlds in sci-fi warfare are mainly reserved for sci-fi. As one of the most influential franchises, Star Wars managed to popularize the pop culture from its adaptation to movies, TV shows, and video games. But where did the Empire came from? The answer doesn't lay in a galaxy far, far away, nor does it lay with the aliens, but the answer lay within the space race. World War II ended after the United States nuked Hiroshima and Nagasaki. There was a struggle for military and political power between the United States and the Soviet Union. The increased tension wasn't a surprise when the British Prime Minister, Winston Churchill, mentioned an imaginary boundary that divides Europe into two separate areas. This area was known as the Iron Curtain. On October 4, 1957, the Soviet Union launched its first artificial satellite called the Sputnik 1. This satellite was capable of monitoring radio operations throughout the world, and it made a single beat while in orbit. That single beat began the space race. As the year progressed, both the United States and the Soviet Union poured a lot of capital in advancements of military weapons, computers, and most importantly, space. Nobody could predict how ubiquitous the space race would truly become. With every test that was accomplished, the future for both countries looked bright. George Lucas was born on May 14, 1944, in Modesto, California. During his high school year, he was interested in becoming a race car driver, and he spent most of his time racing with his own minicar, the Auto Bianchi Bianchima. But things changed on June 12, 1962, when he was almost killed in a race. After that, he lost interest in racing as a career. While he was attending Modesto Junior College, he began filming car races with his 8mm camera. Lucas and his colleague, John Palmer, spent their night going to San Francisco, where they hung out at jazz clubs and a bookstore. One night, at the City Light bookstore, he discovered a flyer for Canon Cinema Screening Film Festival. While attending the film festival in San Francisco, he became interested in becoming a filmmaker. As he and Plummer traveled south to Santa Monica, Lucas started to take inspiration in European films such as Breathless, Jules Le Jim, and 8½. During Lucas' trip to an autocross track, he met a famed cinematographer, Maxwell Wexler. Wexler was impressed on how Lucas handled a camera. It became apparent that Lucas was very enthusiastic about filming. He had a good eye, and he thought visually when he shot with his camera. It appears that his pursuit in filmmaking was beginning to turn bright. Soon, he would be going on an adventure. In 1964, Lucas transferred to the School of Cinematic Arts, a private film school within the University of Southern California. While in college, he became fascinated with an abstract short film, 2187, which was produced by Arthur Lipset. 2187 was a strange and bizarre film that combined black and white 16mm footages shot on the street of Montreal, New York City, and a variety of other locations. Note that the short film doesn't have a coherent plot, nor any characters. Lucas watched that film between 20 to 30 times and thought he wanted to replicate Lipset's work. So he produced short films such as Look at Life and 1 minute and 42.8 seconds using similar camera techniques and editing. By the time he graduated in 1966, dark clouds began to form as he was drafted to fighting the Vietnam War. Lucas tried to join the Air Force, but he was rejected due to numerous speeding tickets. He was finally drafted by the Army for military service, but once again, he would be rejected because his medical exams suggested that he was a diabetic. He returned back to college for a short time in 1967. In his spare time, he became a teaching assistant for night class where he taught cinematography to Navy students. While in college, he started to work on another short film called TRX 1138 for EB. TRX 1138 for EB was a sci-fi short film where it revolves a protagonist, TRX 1138, who is making a desperate attempt to escape from the dystopian future by running through a passageway in enclosed space. Along the way, the government uses computers and cameras to track down TRX and prevent him from making his escape. Taking cues from Lucasart's 2187 film, the TRX film felt pretty strange, but the style and the setting fit into the short film. When Lucas presented his short film at the Student Film Festival in 1967, it blew everyone away. All of a sudden, the Hollywood industry took notice. The film also impressed the Godfather creator Francis Ford Coppola. He admired Lucas' efforts at the festival that he believed that Lucas sent a shockwave through the entire industry. But Coppola wasn't the only guy who took notes of Lucas' work. TRX was so mind-blowing that Lucas won a scholarship from Warner Brothers. Lucas was so eager to work in the Warner Animation Department, the same department that was responsible for creating Looney Tunes. Unfortunately, that studio shut down and was later restructured after Warner Brothers founder Jack Warner sold the studio to Summit Art Production. Luckily, Lucas managed to be friends with Coppola, and he later worked as his personal assistant. This marked an excellent opportunity to work within the Hollywood industry. Without haste, Lucas left college to jump right on the bandwagon. On December 12, 1969, Coppola and Lucas founded American Zoetrope, an American privately owned film studio located in San Francisco. Meanwhile, in the Hollywood industry, a new cultural revolution was storming. On July 14, 1969, film director Dennis Hopper released Easy Rider, and it was a watershed moment. Before the film, industry box office sales were performing terribly due to the outdated quality of the films. It was like the theaters were a ghost town. Somehow, Hopper defied all odds and climbed his way up to the top by releasing Easy Rider. The film contains suggestive scenes that feature sex, drug use, and young hippie people. This film was made with inexpensive and lighter film equipment and was made without any major studio's backing. When the film debuted in theaters, news of it started to spread like wildfire. Even with the success with Easy Rider, the Hollywood industry didn't seem to comprehend the change. During the early 1970s, young people started to jump on the bandwagon. It was so big that many movie studios, such as Warner Brothers, were interested in hiring young, hippie directors who were willing to make more unique films. But at last, Warner Brothers found two young men. George Lucas and Francis Coppola were offered a budget of $1 million to turn Lucas' short film to a theatrical product, TRX 1138. Before Lucas began writing his film, Stanley Kubrick debuted his epic science fiction film called 2001: A Space Odyssey in theaters on April 2, 1968. It was a smash at the box office, garnering over $15 million in North America, and it managed to gain over $190 million worldwide. It wasn't the first film that featured the concept of space travel, but it represented a true step towards science fiction in film. This film did, in fact, influence Lucas to create his epic sci-fi fantasy. Much like the student film, TRX was meant to showcase a man running through underground corridors while security used high-tech surveillance cameras to steady him via a control room. Lucas took his inspiration from books such as George Orwell's 1984 and Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. Both stories told the tale of a dystopia future where the population is controlled by government surveillance. In the book, the government has the power to control all forms of emotion, sexuality, and individuality. The government did everything they could to control the population. The government controlled the population by using drugs, torture, and physiological manipulation. Much like 1984, Easy Rider, and Brave New World, Lucas expanded his creativity from his last student film and opted to show some suggestive scenes such as sex, partial nudity, sci-fi looking drugs, violence, and abstract structures. It also contained heavy social commentary where it portrays public as complacent consumers and the government as violent fascists. THX 1138 context was so racy that in November 1968, the Motion Picture Association of America, or MPAA for short, introduced a motion picture rating system to rate the suitability of a film's themes and content for certain audience. The rating ranged from general audience to restricted. Lucas originally wanted to film his movie in Japan. Due to insufficient budget, he was forced to produce his film in the United States. After filming was complete, Lucas edited the pictures in the attic of a small house in Mill Valley with Mersha Griffin. Mersha Griffin met Lucas when they both attended the University of Southern California. After she graduated, she became a professional editor. She and Lucas were married in 1969 and they live in Mill Valley. She worked as Lucas' editing assistant. Unsurprisingly, Mersha Lucas wasn't thrilled with THX 1138 because she thought it would not engage the audience without a coherent plot. When THX 1138 was done, Warner Brothers was shocked by Lucas' work. It was so edgy and bizarre, it was still taking its cues from other science fiction documentary films from the likes of Bruce Conner and Arthur Lipsett. The film was trimmed off to a mere 4 minutes of filming material so they could debut it at cinemas as a sci-fi love story. Sadly though, the plan backfired. THX 1138 was released in theaters on March 11, 1971. The film received mixed reviews due to its confusing plot. It only earned lowest box office sales of $2.4 million. After the film was canned, Warner Brothers canceled the American Zoetrope deal. This left American Zoetrope bankrupt and Coppola and Lucas with no money. Without major fundings from the big Hollywood industry, Lucas took a big gamble and tried to make a Vietnam War film called Apocalypse Now. He recruited his friend John Millis to write the script, but the timing wasn't right for Apocalypse Now. The public feelings towards the Vietnam War caused Lucas to shelve the project. As a result, Lucas started to create a comedy film called American Graffiti. This movie was about a group of teenagers going out to an adventure based on Lucas' teenage life. Creating a film was a tricky process. Lucas absolutely despised writing, so he was hoping to hire a couple of writers named Gloria Katz and Willard Hike. However, they were not available until after their wedding, so he forced himself to write the script. As he wrote the script, he reflected upon his years as a teenager in Modesto. The script and the screenplay were finished in 3 weeks, and it was edited by the Hikes. Another hoop he had to jump through was finding a major film studio that would fund his film and publish it. Many movie studios rejected Lucas' offer and didn't have any interest in his work. In 1971, he managed to strike a deal with United Artists. They both agreed to make the American Graffiti film first, while his next film will be an epic sci-fi space adventure. Work began on filming American Graffiti, but that project had a bumpy start. Lucas began his filming every night for 28 days. Their budget was less than $800,000. The film's financial condition was limited compared to his last film. He would have to go big in his film or he would have to go home. A few days later, his colleague, Haskell Wexler, was kind enough to step in the project and help Lucas with his expertise in photography. Lucas had a hard time working with the actors, so he decided he would hire a drama coach to help. As Lucas worked with the cast, he tried to set up the scenes and talk with the actors about what they were going to do and where they were going to go. Once he got done talking with the actors, he would set up the cameras up and let the actors run through the scene. The project was so tiresome and complex that had become a nightmare, it became pretty clear that Lucas was not going to last. But one night, his memory of his childhood dream started to come back to him. His dream of making a fantasy space film similar to the scenes like Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers. He continued to think about his space fantasy adventure as he worked on graffiti. At last, he finally managed to relish his work with his wife, Mersha, and his development on the film was complete. The only thing he needs to do was to edit the film and get it distributed under Universal Studios. Finally, Lucas was done filming and now he will have the time to work on his epic space fantasy adventure. Tune in next time where his space fantasy dreams come true. I'm Greg LDClaudius Hyduk. Thanks for watching.